Welcome all to this third in the webinar series of Unearthing the Racist Roots of the Climate Crisis. This is hosted by the Center for Climate Justice and Faith at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, together with it is hosted by the Center for Climate Justice and Faith at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, and in particular, it's hosted by the certificates that we offer, and we'll explain later on. We begin this hour by naming a fierce reality of our existence, and that is that Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary in Berkeley is located within the traditional homelands of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. The Ohlone people were forcibly removed and enslaved. Their lands were stolen from them. That land from which we now benefit continues to be a place of foremost importance to the Ohlone people and all descendants of the Verona Band. Today, these people are part of Berkeley and the larger Bay Area. We honor and uplift their stewardship of this land throughout the generations, as well as their struggle to be federally recognized. We pray that, in sharing this confession, settler colonial descendants will grow in our commitment to help dismantle the colonial structures that still today inhabit our lives and shape our society. May this be so. It is really a joy to me to introduce our two guests today for this webinar. They are Reverend Michael Malcolm and Reverend Abby Mohopt. Reverend Michael Malcolm is the Executive Director of Alabama Interfaith Power and Light and is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. He is founder and Executive Director of the People's Justice Council, which is a nonprofit focusing on environmental justice. Reverend Malcolm serves as the Environmental Justice Minister for the Southeast Conference of the United Church of Christ and is a board member of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. He holds an MDiv degree from the Interfaith Theological Center and an MBA from the Terry School of Business at the University of Georgia. Reverend Malcolm is a widely respected leader with decades of experience in environmental justice advocacy and the fight against environmental racism and injustice, working from a faith-based perspective. He joins us today from Lagos, Nigeria, having just arrived there hours ago after a 12-hour flight. So we thank him for being up in the middle of the night with us. Reverend Dr. Abby Mohopt is an activist and scholar, organizer, and pastor with over 15 years of experience at the intersection of climate, environmental justice, and faith. She is ordained in the Presbyterian Church USA. She also holds a PhD in religion, culture, and ecology from Drew Theological School. Dr. Mohopt has been a leader in the PCUSA efforts at divestment from fossil fuels as a faithful response to the biblical call to care for neighbor and planet. She is widely respected for her international leadership in climate justice work. She served for 5 years as the Director of Education and Training for Green Faith, which is an interfaith international organization. Reverend Mohopt currently serves as Director of the Garrett Collective at Garrett Seminary. Both of these people, the Revs, as we call them, on the writing team of the Building a Moral Economy series, are extraordinary human beings and leaders in the fight against climate injustice. Their co-authored book, Climate Justice, Climate Hope, is the second in a series, the Building a Moral Economy series. In their book, They engage in honest, humorous, provocative, and deeply engaging dialogue with each other, with the book of Ruth in the Hebrew Bible, and with communities of people here in the US and around the world. It really has been my deep privilege and joy to work with them on this book series, and in particular on their book. What we will do today is ask them a couple of questions and then hear what they have to say in response to them. And I'd like to start with this question. So, Rev Michael and Rev Abby, why, with all the responsibilities on your plates, and they are many, why did you say yes to the invitation to co-write this book? Like, what in your stories led you to take this on? I don't know which of you would like to begin, but let's hear what you have to say.
I think I'm gonna let Doc go first.
Abby, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how it came to be. I am also on the Wisdom Council for the series as a whole. And I remember when you, Cynthia, kind of said, you know, if anybody has ideas or has interest in participating in any of the writing of the books, let me know. And I wrote to you and said I'd be interested in co-writing. And here's who I'd like to co-write with. And and you know, that conversation happened probably unwisely as I was finishing my dissertation. And so for a brief period of time, I was both writing this book and my dissertation, which you shouldn't do. But I said yes because I felt like so many people in the academy doing religion and ecology have like that it's easy to just stay in the academy when so much of the life-changing, world-changing work is happening in the world. And I perhaps selfishly really wanted to be part of creating something that people in the pews would want to read and be connected to. And I wanted to learn more from more people and help tell the stories of people that I've been so privileged to organize alongside of. And Reverend Michael was the person I really wanted to write it with. So I said yes because he said yes. And I'm grateful for that yes, even with our busy plate. Your turn, Reverend Michael.
All right. And so I get a call or an email, I can't remember, maybe a text, I can't remember which, but it was like, hey, I'm about to write a book and I wanted to see if you'll co-write it with me. And the first thing went through my mind was, do you know who you're talking to? Because listen, y'all, I love Jesus, but I cuss. And so I was kind of concerned with if you know this was gonna work out, but I also feel like I had something that I wanted to say in a real sense, and that place or that saying came out of a place of compassion and passion, compassion for those who are hurting, but a passion for justice. And so being able to articulate that and put it on paper and have it in the annals of history, it just, I mean, it rung out to me, and it was like, this is a golden opportunity that I can't let pass. I'd already thought about, you know, at some point writing, but it was definitely sped along, even in the midst, as Dr. Abbey has said, of our busy schedules. I know for myself, I'm here in Lagos now, but this is like my sixth or seventh time in 2025 coming to Africa. And then, in addition to all of the other travel and speaking and all of the other convenings and stuff and deadlines and running an organization and campaigns and all of this stuff. But it was extremely important to me that my voice be lent on this particular book and this particular topic. And I mean, it helps that I, wrote with Dr. Abbey, Reverend Dr. Abbey, and Reverend Dr. Abbey, as we all know, is just a badass. So it was easy to do.
Well, great.
Dawn, I
I think
said that out loud.
well, you you're a badass too. So I've said it too.
You both evoke so many things that I'd like to ask you. And if we have time, I'm going to come back to some specific follow-up questions to what you just said. I do want to note one thing that I failed to note in the beginning, and that is to all of you who are present with us in the webinar, you are welcome to raise questions and put them in the chat. And then we will make time to respond to those questions after Reverend Michael and Abby have responded to my questions. We'll make time to respond also to yours. So do put them in the chat. Let me move on to another kind of question, and that is to ask you, what do you mean by the racist roots of the climate crisis, or why address the climate crisis as a matter of racial justice?
Doc, I'll
Take it.
start off with this one. The climate crisis that we face is a crisis because of the ignoring of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and I'll even say, even add into that race issue, rural, poor white people need to be included. Those voices, those bodies, those persons are ignored in this whole race for convenience, if you will. And that right there is what pushes the climate crisis, and us trying to keep things convenient for us, and us trying to have and have some of the luxuries, and even some of it is not even luxury, it's just having things and stuff. And in doing so, we never think about the people that are actually ill affected by our consumerism. And more often than not, due to redlining, due to environmental policy, due to corporations being counted as persons rather than being counted as corporations, businesses, our lands, and I say our because I'm Black and I grew up and still live in an EJ community. Our lands are polluted. Our lungs are polluted. Our minds are hindered. Our economic upward mobility is stalled because of the decisions that we make in our convenience, and because of who it happens to, and for the majority. That's why we can say it's a racial issue that accelerates our climate issue.
All of that. And I think even from the beginning of the burning of fossil fuels, which, the first fossil fuels were found in rural parts of the United States, but quickly was racialized so that people who made money off of extraction of fossil fuels were white folks. And the workers who were many the workers who were doing the extraction were either poor whites or people of color, and then the expansion of fossil fuels happened in conjunction with colonization and missionaries of the church who you know, went ahead of fossil fuel companies and said, we're going to check out um, these folks who are not industrialized, and then we'll report back to you, fossil fuel companies, to tell you how you can extract the oil and take advantage of these communities who don't know any better because they're not white. And so, and they're not civilized. And so it's hard for me not to see racism in that. In the very beginning of the extractive industry that has connected or has created so much climate change. I think the ways in which industrialized countries, which are historically white or Western, have said we deserve to have all of the industrialization that causes climate change, and we should be able to keep doing that, and we're not gonna, in good faith, negotiate to actually make legally binding changes that would help people around the world, primarily people in countries in Africa and in the Pacific Islands and across Asia, you know, folks of color around the world. And these are all of these things contribute to the idea that climate justice or climate injustice is racist, and climate change, the way it's upheld, is racist. And I really think that you know, that puts a lot of the responsibility for fixing the problem of climate change at the feet of those of us who have benefited from white supremacy. And so we talk in the book about how you can't do climate justice if you're not willing to dismantle both capitalism and white supremacy. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of in our book, is that we just are clear. Climate justice and dismantling white supremacy are super intertwined.
So me and Reverend Abby went to Maine for a retreat.
Are you going to out us all as sandal wearers?
I was, now that you mention it, I guess I'll throw that in.
White people,
but
sandals.
we were in Maine for a retreat, and there were some things I noticed in Maine. But just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, to learn more about their data center fight as we've launched our data center campaign. And so looking at the juxtaposition between the two. In Maine, it was very native. It was very pristine and pretty, and you can tell that nature is something that's incorporated. It's something that people use for recreation, but it's something that you can clearly see they appreciate. Right? In Maine, I ain't see nothing but white people. I think I might have saw 3 black people, and them 3 black people were the people that was at the retreat with me. That's including me. In Memphis, however, I hardly saw any white people. I saw a whole lot of black folk. But let me tell you about Memphis. We were in Boxtown community where they are being directly affected by this, by Elon Musk's AI center, data center, which is polluting them in all kind of ways and using up the natural resources. But that wasn't the only industry that was in that community. They were surrounded by like 5 different industries that were polluting that community. In Maine, the people were protected. In Memphis, the people were polluted. What was the difference between Maine and Memphis? Maine is predominantly white folk, where everybody wears sandals. And and Memphis is predominantly black folk. And you can clearly see the demarcation between the two. You can clearly see that they were polar opposites in how the people live. It's not Black folk fault that their lands are polluted. It's not Black folk fault that their lungs are polluted. These industries came into our community. Well, why didn't they come into Maine communities? Because white people protected, Black folk polluted. It's clear. And if you can't address that, then you miss the whole thing, because you don't care about these Black folk, and because you don't care about these brown folk, because you don't care about these indigenous folk, and you put all your crap in their communities, the same thing is the thing that's driving our climate crisis. And so you'll hear me in the book say, if you help the people, you'll heal the planet.
Yep. Preach, Rev.
Period. There's nothing else to be said about it. But until we see one another, until Black folk are seen, until indigenous folk are seen, until our brown brothers and sisters are seen, we cannot see our future, not clearly. Once we see one another, then we can address those ills. Once we address those ills, we can address the ills that's happening with the climate as well, automatically, because you're trying to help these people. Now, why don't we have policies to help these people? Check.
You both make me want to ask you if you could share with us one illustration of a campaign that you have been involved in or helped to lead that addresses both the racism involved in the climate crisis and the climate crisis itself. And I'm thinking about what you just mentioned about the AI data centers. Rev Michael and Abby, I'm thinking about your work in Keep It in the Ground and anti-fossil fuel proliferation. Could you give folks an example of a campaign that you've both been involved, that each of you has been involved in?
I'll give you one. I just talked about it. We have Minus AI, a Minus AI campaign that we just launched on October the 11th. That is teaching people how to use the minus sign and AI after their data searches. Wherever their web search is, you put minus AI behind it. It automatically cancels out AI, which drives down this, which drives down this made up demand for AI, and shows them that we don't actually want to use AI in the way that they're trying to make us use AI, which then can drive down the demand for these data centers that are using up our natural resources and polluting our communities. That's a clear-cut example. And if you look at where these data centers are placed, they're being placed in Black communities, period.
Yep.
End of story. There's nothing else to be said about it. They are being placed in Black communities in the South.
Or in Black and brown communities in Chicago, right? There's a AI data center that might be placed here in Chicago, and it's in a Black and brown neighborhood. Yeah.
And impoverished communities around the world also.
Yeah.
And ICE follows. If you notice where ICE is, you notice where the data centers are, they right there together. It's intimidation.
That's right. And those AI centers use so much drinkable, like in Chicago in particular, they drink potable water, or they use that potable water, which could otherwise be used for drinking.
Well, that's,
I'm so glad
most data centers have to use potable water, if not all, because you can't get any dust or dirt into your system. So in essence, your average data center uses about an Olympic-sized pool of water a day, drinking water. How long you think that's gonna last before we all fighting over water?
Mhm.
For AI stuff that isn't even necessarily accurate or helpful
Or
so
necessary?
or
We were doing
necessary. We
fine
don't need it.
without it.
We don't need it. So I am going to have a separate conversation with you, Rev, about minus AI, and how we can teach more people about how to use that. So, per usual, learning something from you. I'm thinking about the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which I got to be a part of as while I worked at Green Faith, and the non-proliferation fossil-free treaty is a treaty that came out of the Pacific Islands, and Pacific Islanders really saying that they'd been kept from the tables of decision making, particularly at the UN, but kind of everywhere, wherever there was a legally binding conversation, the Pacific Islanders weren't part of it, and so they have been working on getting this treaty signed and passed, yeah, and have gotten cities and some countries to sign on, but mostly smaller entities. And it's been really led by minoritized people. And the demands have included no new fossil fuels, supporting a just energy transition, and having frontline people a part of the conversation. And I really learned a lot from that, from being a part of organizing faith communities to support the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Particularly because we were learning from Pacific Islanders and who are already experiencing really severe consequences of climate change, and already having to immigrate as whole nations, and just feeling really accountable to those communities.
Do you want to mention, Reverend Abby, just that various denominations are involved in divestment campaigns to divest from fossil fuels, and where PCUSA is on that?
Yes, so the United Church of Christ, of which Reverend Michael Malcolm is a part, was the first denomination to support divestment from fossil fuels as a denomination in 2012, and now many other denominations have supported it in some way. The Episcopal Church has supported divestment from fossil fuels. The Presbyterian Church, of which I'm a part, has divested from 5 particular companies through a 10-year campaign, in response to a 10-year campaign. The campaign was so successful that then the denomination added another 5 companies without any more organizing needed, because and now they're in another process around adding more companies, and it's really been several $1 trillion have now been divested from fossil fuels, as a way to say that there are other ways to make money, other ways to invest, other ways to create economic communities. And I will say this, that I'm really proud to work at one of the 3 theological institutions in North America that has divested from fossil fuels. And I'll say too that it was not a fight at Garrett to get them to divest. I wasn't a part of the conversation. I was at Green Faith, kind of at Green Faith, cheering them on as they were doing it. And a bunch of students and staff came and faculty came to the board and said, we want to divest, and here's why. And the board said, we don't need to hear any of your reasons. We're in, which I just feel really proud of. And it's still a viable thing. So if you haven't divested from fossil fuels, you should. And if you want help talking with your institutions or thinking about how you yourself can want to move money, I'm happy to have that conversation. It's still the thing that I think about more than most things. So.
Well, we'll take you seriously about that. But happy to have that conversation. And if it's okay, we'll include your email possibly in the follow-up.
Sure.
Because indeed it is an action that institutions can take, and people can move their institutions toward. Rev Michael, I'm so glad you brought up the AI campaigns. I'm just so glad, because I will add how many people are not yet aware. Many people will think that AI is helping us with using less energy, but in fact, the greenhouse gas emissions that come with AI are astounding. And the sucking up of water. And so just to imagine the sucking up of water in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities in this country, but also in very low-income communities in the global South, and how that is perpetuating another form of colonialism. So I'm just so glad you brought that up, and that you named the fact that there is a campaign, and there are other campaigns at work to reduce that assumption that AI is the way to go and is an ecologically okay way to go. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, Doc, I want to, real
Yes.
quick,
Please.
you missed something out of that. It's
Mhm,
not
mhm.
just that natural resources are being used up. It's not just that you have the light as well
Yes.
as the emissions, pollution that's
Yes.
happening, but also right now the data centers are using something like 1.5% of the world's energy resources, right? Right now, and they're looking to double that by 2026. So when you look at them doubling that, then you're looking at them having to do upgrades to the energy system, to the energy grid, electric grid. You're looking at them having to put in even more fossil fuel in order for them to do it cheaply. They're going to put more fossil fuel in. So you're looking at even more emissions. And so when you look at what's happening with that, not only are you getting duped when it comes down to your natural resources, not only are they stealing from you from your health when it comes down to pollution, but beloveds, they are stealing from you when it comes down to your pockets. They're getting your wealth. Your rates are increasing astronomically. And if we aren't careful, we're going to owe all our money to keeping our lights on. And there will be people who have to file bankruptcy in a real sense because of their utilities. And the reality is, all of us deserve clean air. We all deserve clean water. We all deserve a healthy place to live. We all deserve healthy food. And we all deserve the natural or the basic amenities, such as electricity. And it shouldn't break us to have to do it. But because of privatization, they're going to privatize water. Your bills on your utilities are going up. And you're still going to have to deal with that pollution. And you're going to have to deal with the polluting of your lands and lungs. So these AI centers, y'all, they aren't a joke, and we shouldn't treat them as such. They're an existential threat in a real sense, and our ignorance doesn't help it. Check.
You have just, I have been thinking about if we could get another book in this Building a Moral Economy series. I've been thinking about having, there are two others that I want to do, and one would be on AI. So I'll talk with you further about that.
Doc, I just
Well,
told these people that I love Jesus and I cuss. Don't get me to cuss. Give me a give me a break on these books for a while.
okay.
Let me get a vacation.
Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. Um, so I'd like to switch gears a little bit here and take a moment to ask Sarah Berg if you have questions to present to the revs from the that have come in from the chat.
Hey, hi everybody. My name is Sarah Berg.
Let me introduce, let me just say, Sarah Berg is the Associate Director of the Center for Climate Justice and Faith here at PLTS. And we would not have this magnificent center if it weren't for her brilliance and care in coordinating so many different things, including this webinar. So Sarah, what do you have for us in terms of questions? And if there are none, then I will continue with a few others.
Yes, we don't have any questions yet, but I just want to point out to everybody, because we haven't pointed out yet, but that there is a way for you to ask questions. In the bottom of your screen, there's a square with a question mark in it that says Q&A. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask our panelists today, please go ahead and ask those questions, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes after our panelists answer this next question from Cynthia.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you, Sarah. So here's what I'd like to ask you now. What would you like to say to people before they read your book? What would you like them to know? And
That Reverend Michael
maybe
likes Jesus and also cusses.
Mhm. And also instructed us in our first meeting of all the authors from the series that Jesus liked to party. So we get a little
Correct.
more insight into Reverend Michael there.
No, and
Yeah,
I
so
think well, I'll say one of the things, another thing I'm really proud of about the book is that it's easy to follow the co-authorship of the book because we've interrupted each other in the book really obviously. So it's easy to hear whose voice is saying what. And I also think coming to the book with a sense of humanity and materiality, as we would say in the academy, to be really embodied and place-based, and not looking for statistics, but looking for stories.
Lovely. Thank you. I have a hunch Rev Michael may have disappeared from us. We were forewarned that he had spotty internet service in Lagos. Rev Michael, are you still there? Okay, let us hope that he can get back on. And if not, please, to those who are here in the audience, understand that he is coming from a situation with some spotty internet interface. Abby, yes, Sarah.
I just wanted to share that we have a few questions that came in from the audience before you move ahead with your next question. Or
I'll take a pause. I'll take a pause on my questions, and you go ahead with what we have from the audience there.
Okay, great. Our first question is from Cassandra, and she's asking, please provide your definition of a moral economy.
I'm hoping, Cynthia, that you'll say a response to this question too. Actually, when I think about a moral economy, I think about first the Greek root of the word economy, oikos, which means community and household. And so I feel like my interpretation, definition of a moral economy takes seriously the fact that we're all a part of a global family, and that however our economic systems are set up in order to be moral, they have to be equitable and allow for everyone to have the kind of good life that they imagine.
Yeah, I accept your invitation to say a word, Abby. I think also of oiko, the word economy comes from the Greek oikonomos, meaning oikos, the household of God, nomos, the rules to run it. And we see from a Christian faith-based perspective, we see the rules of love your neighbor as yourself and serve and preserve the garden, which we get in Genesis 2:15, and love your neighbor we get in Leviticus, and then repeated by Jesus. And to operate, so those are the rules for running our economies from a Christian faith-based perspective. And so how do you operationalize that? And one of the things that we've tried to do in the book series is give 3 overall principles that kind of operationalize those rules. And one is that a moral economy practices and policies would lead to would be equitable, meaning would lead to reducing the gaps between rich and poor rather than increasing the gaps. So that's one principle. And the second is ecological. And that would mean that they're within Earth's great economy. So they are not depleting. So that means practices and policies of life, well, pertaining to transportation, food, investment, banking, housing, everything that we produce and consume would be sustaining of Earth's ecosystems, not depleting of them, which is an incredible, vibrant principle. It would say, for instance, that business, which has a tremendous role to play in building a moral economy, businesses would be zero carbon emissions. So how's that for a criteria for a corporation? A criteria for AI or data centers, zero carbon emissions. And the third principle is democratic. And democratic really refers to accountable and distributed power. So there again, that would mean that economic institutions are accountable to the people impacted by them, which is quite the opposite of privatized institutions that are accountable only to shareholders. So I won't say a lot more now, but just using those 3 criteria for the policies and the practices of economic life shift to a very different reality from what we see in advanced global capitalism, or as we know it, neoliberal capitalism. So that's what I would add to the conversation in response to that question. Thank you, Cassandra, for a really good question. Yeah. Sarah, others?
Yes, I have another question from Christiana. She writes, Reverends, thank you for your work. Are there particular theological ideas, images, or scriptures that you find yourself returning to in the work that you do?
You know, I realized that I've been wrestling with not just the Genesis creation stories and how the human fits into the larger ecology, but also Psalm 148, that I've been wrestling with those texts for almost 20 years. And that in particular, I was thinking about this on on Monday I was driving back from Dubuque, where I gave a lecture on the sea monsters in Psalm 148 as a way to have hope and faith in the work of climate justice. Essentially saying that like you can't be too scared of the work when you have sea monsters as your cousins. And I sent a Marco Polo to my niece who's 21, and kind of mid-sentence I stopped and was like, I just spent all this time talking about how sea monsters are in our family because Genesis says that we're all from the same topsoil, and if we all come from topsoil, then we all come from the same line of family, which is essentially the work that I did, you know, when I was doing my master at my THM, and I just it stopped me in my tracks. I've been in this same theological idea of us all being in the same ecological family. Like I've been doing that work for 20 years. And I think why, like it still captures my imagination because because I feel it so viscerally in my body, right? That I feel so connected to other parts of creation, and feel like, what? You're coming after, like when one part of my family hurts, like that hurts me too. And kind of this like stubborn Midwestern oldest daughter mentality kicks in, and to just be like, don't come for my people. Like no matter the people, they're mine, right? We belong to each other, and God said we're supposed to care for creation, and that means I have to, you know, struggle for creation. Otherwise, I'm not a good human, and I'm not a good family member. So those are the three texts.
If anyone else has a question, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A. We just have a few more minutes. But Cynthia, we're done with the questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
If you'd like to ask
Okay.
one.
I thank both of those two people for their really good questions, and we could now talk for hours about those questions, for hours, and including about Rev. Abby's response. We have just a couple more minutes, maybe 2 more minutes before we move into the next part of this hour. Abby, could you just say maybe a moment about why you chose to work with the Book of Ruth in your book? And that is to say that the Book of Ruth shows up in Abby and Michael's book very prominently.
Yeah, so we said in the text, when we started writing, Reverend Michael and I sat down and said, okay, if we're both pastors, if we were thinking about this as a sermon, what, and maybe doing a little eisegesis, what are the texts that tell us about what a moral economy is, right? If we think that the Bible has something to say about moral economy and how we're supposed to create new systems, what are the texts? And we very quickly came to the story in Acts about the early church figuring out how they would create essentially a mutual aid society. But then Reverend Michael kept talking about Boaz and how Boaz felt responsible to his bloodline, and how Ruth and Naomi chose each other when they didn't have to. And then we got to and then there's like the economic, ecological idea of gleaning on the side of fields throughout the story and all of that. And for us, it was really more important that the people were choosing each other across across nations, right? Ruth and Naomi are from different nations and are choosing each other and being together across grief and then building a new life together. And Boaz, steps in for his family and says, I'm going to take care of you. Those are some of the reasons why we picked Ruth.
Good. Thank you. It's fascinating in the book to listen to the two of you in dialogue with the Book of Ruth. It brought up things that I had never ever seen in that book. And it brought out a lot of power of people talking together about biblical texts. Yeah. I want to shift us at this moment very, very briefly to introduce the co-sponsors of this webinar series. And in fact, it is different certificate programs at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary. And one of those is, the first three of those are offered by our Center for Climate Justice and Faith. And one is a certificate in faith-rooted community organizing, in which participants really learn the arts of community organizing from a team of 3 incredible faith-based community organizers, one with an MDiv, in a 9-month fully online program that includes workshops and coaching and practice and teamwork and a lot of fun. The second, and I'd like to call upon the Center's Associate Director, Sarah Berg, to say just a word about the certificate in climate justice and faith in the Spanish language.
Yeah, so we're currently accepting applications to our Spanish language certificate in climate justice and faith. This is a 9-month online cohort-based program. And it's completely in Spanish, and it's led by Reverend Dr. Nettie Astudillo. And it was created in collaboration between PLTS, the Lutheran University in El Salvador, the Augsburg Lutheran Seminary in Mexico City, and a contextual training program in Argentina. So not only is the entire program in Spanish, it's also, everything is very contextualized for Spanish-speaking people in North America, South America, and the Caribbean. The applications are due November 8th, and I'm putting a link in the chat right now so you can get to those applications. And then I'll also, oh wait, we don't have a chat. Sorry. I will put those in the email that we're sending out. I'll send all of those links.
Okay, good. And you reminded me, Sarah, I forgot to say that the applications are also now open for the certificate in faith-rooted community organizing for climate justice. And we will also include the link for that. I would like to now call on the Reverend Sarika Nelavala, who teaches for the PLTS certificate in racial justice and faith. And Reverend Sarika, could you give us a word about that certificate, which is also a co-sponsor of this webinar series?
Sure. Hi, thank you for inviting me, and thank you. I'm thankful for the opportunity that I was able to teach in the first cohort in the Racial Justice Certificate Program. And my course was the Intersectionality and Biblical Theological Foundations. So the Racial Justice Certificate in Racial Justice and Faith, it's an immersive learning. It is mostly for the leaders, learning also from the modules that are focused to give the lens for different ways of looking at things. So it's a Black, Indigenous, Latin, Asian, Pacific Islander communities about multicultural experiences. So it is bringing these kind of experiences and lens to the light through a structured program, and that's what this is all about. And so this is a 6-week, I think the certificate has more courses like for you to get a full certificate, but I think the way the program is set up, that you could do just one individual course and not want to do the rest of them, or you can do all of them. And it's also on a really friendly pace. to be able to handle with our lives and all other things that we are doing, but still get a structured instruction to understand different lens and the ways of looking at things. So from multicultural experiences and values, and so very intentionally these modules were developed to be able to give that chance for the leaders to really immerse themselves, even though it is an asynchronous classes. So to give more opportunity for more people to be able to join. So I think that's briefly what it is. I can answer if you have any questions, and I'm sure others as well from PLTS.
Thank you, Reverend Sarika. And you iterate one thing that I will repeat, and that is that all of these certificates are indeed fully online. And while online, they are also very deeply committed to building community and deeper relationality amongst the people involved. Finally, just one word also about the book series, of which Reverend Michael and Reverend Abby's book is a part. Their book is Climate Justice, Climate Hope, and it's part of a 6-volume series called Building a Moral Economy. And we will include in the follow-up a link to the website for that series. It is produced by Fortress Press, and I am editing that series. So we have a couple minutes left, and we'd like to ask Reverend Abby and Reverend Michael if you have any closing words for us before we all part ways.
So I apologize, y'all. You know, I'm out of the country, and so internet is not something that's all the way stable everywhere you go. But here's what I would like to give people: go buy the book. You're not just gonna be pleased with the information, but you'll be entertained by the conversation. So go get the book. Go get the book. I don't really have another pitch or even another piece of advice for you outside of go get the book. You need this book in your library, but not just need it in your library. You need to have this book to do some Bible studies with. You need to have this book to do some group talks with. This book will be great in your classrooms. This
book would be great in your Bible studies, and as you're preaching and doing spiritual reflection with all that you do. Each chapter ends with a prayer, and so really, I would never think to complete Reverend Michael's sentences, but in this case, go buy the book, y'all. It's fun to write and hard to write, and I think it's fun to engage in. The last thing I'll say is that climate change is a global issue, and we resist on a local level. And so I hope you'll find local ways that you, as a person of faith and a person who belongs to other parts of the world, find ways to resist climate change and to build a moral economy in that vein.
Well, then I wish to thank Reverend Abby and Reverend Michael for creating this creative and engaging and sometimes very humorous book. And I want to, and thank you also for giving your time to be with us in this hour, and especially in the middle of the night for you, Reverend Michael. Thank you, Reverend Sarika, for coming and joining us to introduce, and thank you for teaching in the Certificate in Racial Justice and Faith. Thank you so much, Sarah Berg, for organizing this event and facilitating it, making it all possible. And thank you to those of you who are here as participants. We are delighted that you could join us, and we encourage you indeed to buy the book, but also to check out the links that will be sent to you in a follow-up email. And with that, blessings on all, and may we have wisdom, and may we have courage and community for faithful living in these challenging times. Bye all.
Thanks.
Mhm.